Okay, welcome back. So I want to just kind of touch a little bit more on patient's perception. I think this is one of the most important things for you to learn. What one person thinks of an illness or pain and how it affects them is very different from the way another person thinks it affects them. How it affects their ADLs, as I talked about at the end of the last presentation, how it affects their daily living, how it affects the way they live, how it affects what they can and can't do is very different for each person. So I like to describe this in a way that hopefully you will understand. When a patient says that they have pain, we will ask them to rate that pain. And typically we use a pain scale. So at one end of the scale we have the number 0, which is no pain at all. And then on the other end of the scale we have 10, which is excruciating pain, worst pain ever. Never have they had that bad of pain before, or even if they had, it was the worst pain they've ever felt. Now, somebody may have a migraine headache, and they say it is a 10 out of 10. It's the worst pain that they've ever had. And someone else has a migraine headache, similar, maybe in the same place, and they say, well, it's like a 4 out of 10. What you have to focus on is not the number that they give you. When we do a pain scale, it's not about that number. It's not that, okay, someone with a 10 is having much worse pain than someone with an 8. Or someone with an 8 is having much more pain than someone with a 4. Or someone with that 10 and someone with that 4, obviously the 10 is in much more pain than the person with the 4. It's about the perception of the patient. So for that patient with the 10, that is the worst pain that they can imagine. That is horrible. For them, it is really affecting everything. With the patient with the 4, it may be the same pain. It may really, if we could feel the pain, it may not feel any different than that person with the 10, but it's how they perceive it. It isn't the worst pain they ever had. They're still able to function. They're still able to do their ADLs. They're able to live their life, but it's getting harder. It's still bothering them. But it doesn't mean that their pain is less. It's just that it's not, they're perceiving it as not being as bad as that person with the 10. So when you ask that, especially that pain question for a patient, always remember that. Someone who says they're having a 4 out of 10 versus someone who says they're having a 10 out of 10. That person with the 4 doesn't mean that they're having less pain. Doesn't mean that they're any less urgent than that person with the 10. It just means that they maybe have a higher pain tolerance, so it doesn't feel like the worst. Maybe they actually had something happen to them where the pain they had was so excruciating, they'll never feel anything like that again, so they know that was the 10. This is not the 10. It's all about that perception. And the same with when we're talking about this illness or this condition that the patient is having, how it affects them. That perception is so important. You know, someone who has a stroke and can't use one side of their body, they may say, well, you know, it affects my daily living, of course, because I can't do everything that I want to do, but there's a lot of things I can do. Whereas someone else who had the same type of a stroke has the same debilitating condition, maybe the same side of the body's affected the exact same way, and they'll say, It's completely changed everything that I can do. I can't do anything the way I used to. It's horrible. It's the worst ever. So those are just some examples, and I really like to emphasize this because throughout your nursing career, you're going to assess your patient. You're going to assess them, and then you're going to give a treatment, and then you're going to assess them again. Or you're going to assess them today, and after resting overnight, you're going to go back in their room tomorrow, and you're going to assess them again, and you're going to do a comparison. See if they are improving. And perception is the key to all of those assessments that you do on that patient. All right, analysis of a symptom, we talked about that, and how whenever somebody says they have something going on, they describe the symptom, you need to analyze that symptom. You're going to hear about this in lab. Jane is going to give you a handout that talks about analysis of a symptom. If your lab partner that you're doing the assessment on says they have a symptom, you're going to analyze that all the time. PQRSTU. So P, provocative or palliative. What provokes it? What makes this symptom worse? What makes this symptom start? What are you doing? What is provoking this symptom? The quality or the quantity. How does it look? How does it feel? Tell me more about it. Give me a good description of it. Region or radiation. Where is this symptom located? So if they have a headache, where? Is it all over the head, or is it in one particular part of the head? Radiation, does the pain radiate anywhere if it's pain? Quite often you hear about patients who have heart attacks and they have pain radiating into their left arm, their left jaw, even into their back. Using that severity scale we just talked about. Timing, when did it start? How long has it been going on? Knowing the timing of the situation can really help. And then, of course, the U, understanding that patient's perception. Then we want to ask them about their past history. So these are all things that are pretty much self-explanatory. They're on pages 51 through, 51 through 52. You can look at these, but these are all of the things that we're going to want to ask them about their past history. Now, medication reconciliation, this is really, really important. We always are going to ask our patient what medications they are taking. Remember that medications include anything that they're taking that's prescription, anything they buy over the counter like Tylenol or ibuprofen, or maybe allergy medicine, or anything that they're taking on their own. It also includes supplements, vitamins, herbals, any of those things. Everything that they are taking for their health in medication form, even those vitamins and supplements, we need to know about those, because when we are looking at certain medications, even herbals and supplements can interfere with them. So we need to know everything. We need to know why they're taking it, the medication, when are they taking it, how many times a day are they taking it, maybe it's a once a week medication, whatever it is, we need to know how they are taking. Is it oral? Is it a pill form? Is it a shot? Is it a liquid? Is it a patch? Maybe it's absorbing. So we need to know how they take it. If they tell us what they're taking it for, does it match what we know the medication typically is for? Family history, this is pretty obvious. Just looking into all of the patient's family history, this helps us determine what things they're at risk for by looking at their family history, and it can influence the decisions that they make. Once we gather this information, we can construct a genogram, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in lab, but it's basically a family tree that just gets a little bit deeper with specific things that the patient is at risk for. And this is something that you guys are going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. You're going to gather information, and we'll talk about this in lab. You're going to gather information from your families, and you're going to create or construct your own genogram, and then we're going to see the things that you are at risk for and the things that you're not at risk for. Review of systems, you can look through all of these on your own. These start on page 54 in your book, and it's going over the overall health state of the patient, and it's looking at each of the systems. And as you go through each of these systems and you look at these are the systems that we're going to be looking at in this class. We're going to be doing assessments on all of these. So in other words, you're going to be doing an assessment on the respiratory system. You're going to be doing an assessment on the cardiovascular system, the musculoskeletal system. So when you're assessing your patients and which will be your lab partners here in this class, these are the things that we're going to be going over on a weekly basis. Now, we talked about the functional assessment. So this is where we look at those ADLs, those activities of daily living that we talked about. And when we're looking at these, we assess their function. We assess the function of the patient. What is their function level? So these all are included in these things. And let me just look and see. This starts on page 56. Really read through these things so that you understand, because not only are you going to be doing a functional assessment and upcoming in lab on your partner, but you're also going to be doing a combined assignment, I believe. I think that's what we're working towards, which would include health assessment, your pathophysiology class, and your nursing concepts class, where you're going to do functional assessment on patients and kind of put everything into the nursing process. Don't get too worried about it right now. You're just learning the basic steps. It'll make more sense as the weeks go on and you see this. But read through these and notice that all of these things are included, and these are the things we need to ask our patients about. One of the things I want to point out on here is it says illicit or street drugs. So these are things that maybe they use marijuana, maybe they're an opioid user. We need to know these things because we can't take care of them if we don't know. It's not because we're going to turn them in. It's not because we're going to lecture them on the reason why they shouldn't be doing these things. Yes, we're going to provide them with opportunities to get help if they want, but it's certainly nothing that we're going to condemn them for. We have to let them know that we need to know what it is that they're doing, so that we can help them, because maybe some of them, if they're taking opioids or they're taking illegal drugs, those things could interact with some of the stuff that maybe our providers want to give to them. So it's really important that we establish that trusting relationship with the patient and are able to get that information. The first week we're going to go over culture, so we'll talk more about specific things with culture at that time. But these are some of the things that we're looking at their spiritual needs, their past health history. We'll talk a little bit about a BCG vaccine, but all of you probably had to have a TB test, or you're looking at getting the TB test done for tuberculosis. In some countries, they still have tuberculosis. So a lot of those people, if they're coming over to our country, maybe have had a vaccine called BCG. And a BCG that helps to prevent tuberculosis. Very few people in the United States have had it unless they came from a foreign country where it is still prevalent. But those people can't have the typical TB test where they put the injection under the skin on the arm like you probably had, because it'll always show that they have TB even though they don't. The BCG makes it look like they do. So that's why it's important for you to know about that. And then, of course, making accommodation for developmental needs, looking at the different stages of life, the very young to the very old, and we have people who have physical disabilities, and we need to accommodate for them, mental disabilities, all of those things. So as we're doing our health assessments, we may not go over all of this stuff completely, but always know that in each chapter here it does talk about accommodating for the different needs. So always read through those sections so that when you get to those stages you're able to do that. Let me know if you have any questions on this information. Remember, this is out there so you can review it anytime. Have a great day.